The sun gently illuminated St. Joseph's Church in DuPont, turning an ordinary Saturday into something special, almost magical. Flowers, white ribbons, and balloons decorated every corner. Today, 30-year-old Aisha Thompson was to become the wife of 35-year-old Marcus Johnson, ending their 3-year romance with a solemn "I do" before God and their loved ones. Aisha stood in front of the mirror in the bridal room, smoothing the exquisite lace on her dress with her hands. Her dark skin glowed, accentuated by the soft white satin. Her long curls were styled into an elegant hairstyle adorned with pearl pins. With slightly trembling fingers, she adjusted her veil, still not quite believing that this day had finally arrived. "You are the most beautiful bride I have ever seen," said Tamara Williams, Aisha's best friend, helping her with the finishing touches. "Marcus is a very lucky man." Aisha smiled, but a barely noticeable shadow of anxiety flashed across her brown eyes. "Thank you, Tam. You're the only one who's been with me every step of the way." Tamara squeezed her hand sympathetically. She was the only one who knew the entire journey Aisha had been through, all the difficulties and pain of transforming from Andrew Thompson into the woman she had always felt herself to be. Years of hormone therapy, painful surgeries, the constant fear of rejection. All of that was behind her now. Looking at Aisha, no one would have guessed her past. She was simply a beautiful, confident woman, ready to marry the man she loved. "Are you sure you don't want to tell him?" Tamara asked quietly, adjusting the bouquet of white roses. "Now before the ceremony?" Aisha shook her head, her lips pressed tightly together. "No. I'm not that person anymore. Andrew is in the past. Marcus loves me for who I am now. Why stir up something that died long ago? But if he finds out by accident—" "He won't find out," Aisha cut her off. "We're moving to another city after the honeymoon. No one there will know about my past. We'll start with a clean slate." A knock on the door interrupted their conversation, and Marcus's older brother Jamal peeked into the room. His tall figure in a black suit and simple tie gave the impression of severity and solidity, which was further emphasized by his harsh features. 15 minutes until the ceremony," he said, giving Aisha a cold, appraising look. Jamal had never made a secret of his dislike for his brother's bride. She was too perfect, too refined for their working-class family. Something about her seemed fake, wrong. But Marcus was blinded by love and wouldn't listen to any warnings. "Thanks, Jamal," Aisha replied with a forced smile. When the door closed, Tamara frowned. "I don't like the way he looks at you. It's like he's digging with his eyes." "It doesn't matter," Aisha dismissed, checking her reflection one last time. "The only thing that matters is that Marcus loves me. You know, Jamal has always been a complicated person. He's more possessive than most people. He's just afraid of losing his influence over his brother." Friends and relatives gathered in the main hall of the church. About 100 people filled the wooden pews, whispering to each other and waiting for the bride to appear. Marcus stood at the altar, nervously adjusting his bow tie. At 35, he had finally found the one he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. As the successful owner of a construction company, he could afford a lavish wedding and was happy to fulfill Aisha's every wish. Jamal took his place next to his brother as a witness, holding a crumpled envelope in his pocket. His face remained impassive, but inside, a storm of emotions raged. A week before the wedding, he had received an anonymous letter with photos and information about Aisha. Information that turned his whole world upside down. He couldn't believe his eyes. The perfect woman his brother was about to marry had once been a man named Andrew. To Jamal, it seemed like a monstrous deception, a betrayal he couldn't allow. He wanted to show the letter to Marcus right away, but something stopped him. Perhaps it was a shadow of doubt. The envelope had come with no return address, and the photos could have been fake. Or maybe it was simply a reluctance to destroy his brother's happiness a few days before the wedding. But as the ceremony approached, Jamal's conviction that he had to intervene only grew stronger. The music grew louder, all the guests rose from their seats, and the church doors swung open. Aisha entered, radiant and beautiful, accompanied by her elderly uncle, who had replaced her father. Her white dress with a lace train flowed behind her, creating the impression that she was floating above the floor. Marcus looked at her with adoration. To him, she was perfection. When they met 3 years ago at a charity event, he knew immediately that it was fate. Since then, every day had only strengthened his conviction that Aisha was the woman he wanted to grow old with. The ceremony went off without a hitch. The exchange of vows, the wearing of rings, a long kiss to the applause of the guests. The air was filled with happiness and hope. The festive banquet was held in the banquet hall of the DuPont Grand Hotel, which was decorated according to Aisha's wishes, elegantly, with a predominance of white and gold. Fresh flowers in tall vases, slender candles, crystal glasses on every table. Everything spoke of the impeccable taste of the newlyweds. The newlyweds' first dance brought tears of joy to the guests' eyes. They moved as one, as if made for each other, never taking their eyes off each other. "I am the happiest man on earth," Marcus whispered in his new wife's ear. "You are perfect. Just perfect." Aisha kissed him, afraid that the day would end, that her fairy tale would be destroyed if the truth came out. She looked at the jubilant guests, at Tamara raising a glass to them, and tried to remember every second of that day. Jamal watched them, nervously sipping his whiskey. His thoughts were darker than the clouds. He saw how his younger brother looked at his wife, how love blinded him, made him vulnerable. After his third glass, Jamal made a decision. He had to protect his brother, even if it meant sacrificing his temporary happiness. Waiting for the moment when Aisha stepped away to talk to the guests, he called Marcus over. "We need to talk," he said seriously. "In private." "About your wife," Marcus frowned, displeased with his brother's tone. "Now? On my wedding day?" "That's exactly why," Jamal insisted, squeezing his elbow tightly. "Let's go to my room. It's important." Reluctantly, Marcus followed his brother, apologizing to the guests with a brief, "I'll be back soon." Aisha watched them go with a worried look. Something in Jamal's face made her heart sink with a sense of foreboding. "Did something happen?" Tamara asked, noticing her friend's concern. "I don't know," Aisha replied, her eyes fixed on the receding figures of her husband and his brother. "Jamal has never approved of our relationship with Marcus. He thinks I'm not right for their family. Don't worry about his opinion," Tamara snorted. "This is your day. You deserve to be happy." Aisha nodded, but her anxiety remained. She decided to go to the bridal room to touch up her makeup and collect her thoughts. Tamara offered to go with her, but Aisha assured her friend that she could manage on her own and that she needed a few minutes of quiet. In the room, Jamal Marcus was losing patience. He wanted to return to his wife and guests, not listen to his brother's latest complaints. "Well, what is it that you wanted to tell me?" Jamal took an envelope out of his jacket's inside pocket and threw it on the table. "Open it. I received this a week ago." Anonymous Marcus reluctantly took the envelope. Inside were photographs and documents. With each page he looked at, his face changed. First bewilderment, then shock, disbelief, and finally anger. The photos showed Aisha in the process of transformation. The documents testified to a name change, from Andrew Thompson to Aisha Thompson. Medical reports on surgeries, documents on hormone therapy, an old passport. All this left no doubt about the authenticity of the information. "This can't be," Marcus whispered, turning pale. "It's fake. Check the dates, the names," Jamal insisted, putting his hand on his brother's shoulder. "It all adds up. Your perfect girlfriend is a fraud. She's been lying to you all this time." Marcus looked up at his brother, his eyes filled with pain and confusion. "Why didn't you show me this earlier?" I wasn't sure if the documents were real. And I didn't want to ruin your days before the wedding. I thought maybe she would confess to you herself, but now you're married. She tricked you into marrying." Jamal didn't finish his sentence, seeing his brother's face contort. Marcus didn't listen. He grabbed the documents and ran out of the room. He needed to hear the truth from Aisha herself. Aisha was standing in front of the mirror in the bridal room when the door burst open. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, his face contorted with anger and pain. "Is it true?" he asked, throwing the photos on the dressing table. "Were you a man?" The color drained from Aisha's face. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't utter a word. The fear she had lived with for years had finally caught up with her on the happiest day of her life. Jamal appeared behind Marcus, his eyes cold and determined. "Answer my brother," he demanded, entering the room. "Marcus, I can explain," Aisha finally managed to say, taking a step toward her husband. "I've always been a woman inside. My body just didn't match how I felt. I wanted to tell you. Many times I wanted to, but I was afraid of losing you." "You lied to me," Marcus shouted, backing away. "All this time. Our relationship, our wedding, it's all a lie." No. Aisha approached him, reaching out her hands. "I love you. I'm the same woman you fell in love with. Nothing has changed. I was just afraid you wouldn't accept me if you found out." Marcus backed away even further, his face contorted with disgust. He couldn't look at the woman he had called his wife just an hour ago. "Don't touch me!" He almost spat out the words. "I don't know who you are!" Aisha fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face, smearing her carefully applied makeup. "Marcus, please! I'm still the same. I love you." But Marcus wasn't listening anymore. He turned and ran out of the room, leaving Aisha sobbing on the floor. Jamal stayed behind, closing the door behind his brother. He looked at Aisha with cold hatred. "You ruined my brother's life," he said quietly. "You disgraced our family." Aisha lifted her tear-stained face. "It wasn't me," she whispered. "You showed him the documents today." "You ruined everything." "No, you ruined everything with your lies," Jamal replied, looking down at her. After a while, Jamal left the room, closing the door tightly behind him. Tamara, concerned about her friend's long absence, decided to check if she was all right. She knocked on the bride's door but got no answer. Carefully opening the door, she saw Aisha lying on the floor in a white dress stained with blood. For a moment, Tamara stood frozen, not believing her eyes. Then a scream escaped her throat, shattering the festive atmosphere of the wedding and turning a day of joy into a day of mourning. The guests rushed in panic toward the scream, and Marcus collapsed to his knees in front of his wife's body. "Aisha! No! Marcus cried, hugging her bloodied body. "Someone call an ambulance!" But it was too late. The perfect wedding had turned into a nightmare. Aisha Thompson, who just an hour ago had become Aisha Johnson, was dead. Victoria Clark parked her black Ford outside the DuPont Grand Hotel and looked grimly at the festive decorations, which now seemed out of place. The 42-year-old detective had been with the DuPont Police Department for 17 years, but a murder at a wedding was something new even for her. In the crimson glow of the police lights, the white ribbons and flowers looked ominous. "What do we have?" she asked, approaching the young officer on duty at the cordon tape. "The bride was killed in her room." 2 shots to the chest, presumably from a small-caliber pistol, replied the officer, checking his notebook. The body was discovered by the victim's friend at approximately 6:30 p.m. The groom and his brother were seen leaving the room shortly before that. Victoria nodded, mentally piecing together the first picture of the incident. Witnesses? About 100 guests. Most were in the banquet hall and didn't see anything. The hotel staff is currently being questioned. The groom, his brother, and the bride's friend are in the interrogation room. Weapon? Not found. Initial examination showed no signs of forced entry. The victim apparently knew her killer. Victoria put on latex gloves and entered the hotel. The elevator took her to the 4th floor, where the bride's room was located. Forensic experts were already at work, photographing the crime scene and collecting evidence. "Detective Clark?" She nodded to the lead expert, a dark-skinned man with glasses. "What can you tell me?" "Death occurred between 6 and 6:30 p.m., he replied without looking up from his work. 2 bullets, both to the heart. Death was almost instantaneous. No signs of a struggle. She either didn't expect the attack or knew the assailant and wasn't afraid of him." Victoria moved closer to the body. Aisha Thompson, no, now Aisha Johnson, lay on the floor in a wedding dress stained with blood. Her face, despite traces of smudged mascara, looked peaceful, with no signs of fear or pain. This was strange for a victim of violent death. "What about these photos?" Victoria asked, pointing to the pictures scattered on the floor. "We don't know yet. They are clearly related to the victim, but their significance has yet to be determined." Victoria picked up one of the photos. It showed a young man who vaguely resembled Aisha. The detective frowned as she put together the first pieces of the puzzle. After finishing her examination of the crime scene, she headed to the interrogation room, where the main witnesses were waiting for her. She decided to talk first to Tamara Williams, the bride's best friend and the person who had discovered the body. Tamara sat at the table, her dark eyes red from crying, her hands trembling as she raised a glass of water to her lips. "Miss Williams?" Victoria began, sitting down opposite her. "I'm very sorry for your loss. I understand that this is a difficult time for you, but I need to ask you a few questions." Tamara nodded, clutching the glass. "Tell me what happened today. Everything you remember." "Everything was so good," Tamara began in a trembling voice. "The wedding was just perfect." Aisha was so happy. Her voice broke, and she took a deep breath to calm herself. "After the ceremony and the first dance, I noticed that Marcus's brother, Jamal, took him aside. They looked tense. Then they went somewhere together." Aisha was worried. She decided to go to her room, saying she wanted to fix her makeup. "What time was that?" "Around 6 in the evening, maybe a little earlier. I offered to go with her, but she said she wanted to be alone. When she didn't come back after 30 minutes, I went to check if she was okay." "And what did you find?" Tamara closed her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was lying on the floor. There was blood everywhere. Her beautiful dress. Tamara couldn't continue and burst into tears. Victoria waited silently for the woman to calm down. When questioning witnesses, especially those deeply affected by the tragedy, patience was key. "Did you see anyone entering or leaving Aisha's room?" Tamara shook her head. "No, but the corridor is long, and I was coming from the banquet hall. Someone could have gone in the other direction." Victoria nodded, taking notes. "Miss Williams, what do you know about these photos?" She placed the photos collected from the crime scene on the table. Tamara paled as she looked at the photos. "Where did you get them?" They were scattered next to Aisha's body. "Do you know what they mean?" Tamara was silent, clearly struggling with herself. Victoria waited, not rushing her. "Detective, what I'm about to tell you is personal. Very personal. Aisha wouldn't want this to become public knowledge. I understand. But this is a murder investigation, Miss Williams. If this information is relevant to the investigation, I need to know it." Tamara took a deep breath. Aisha was a transgender woman. Her name used to be Andrew Thompson. She transitioned 6 years ago. Before she met Marcus, Victoria kept a neutral expression, although this information explained a lot. Did Marcus know about this? No. Aisha was afraid he wouldn't accept her if he found out the truth. She planned to tell him after the wedding, when they were already married, or maybe never tell him at all. Andrew was dead to her, you see. She identified completely as a woman. Who else knew? As far as I know, only me and her doctors. Her parents died when she was still Andrew. She had no other close relatives. How do you think those photos ended up in the room? Tamara shook her head. I don't know. But if Marcus saw them, if he found out the truth on their wedding day… She fell silent, unable to voice her terrible suspicion. Victoria nodded understandingly. The motive for the murder was becoming obvious. A man learns that his new wife was once a man. Shock, anger, and feelings of betrayal could push him to a desperate act. After finishing with Tamara, Victoria moved on to questioning Marcus Johnson. The groom sat staring into space with a blank look. His hands, still in his wedding suit, lay limply on the table. He didn't look like a murderer, but like a man who had lost everything. Mr. Johnson, Victoria began gently, I need you to tell me what happened today. Marcus slowly raised his eyes, which revealed deep pain. I married the woman I loved more than anything in the world, and an hour later she was dead. His voice sounded monotonous, lifeless. What else do you need to know? Where were you between 6:30 and 7 p.m.? Marcus swallowed. My brother Jamal showed me something, documents and photographs, about Aisha's past. And what was that? Marcus faltered, unable to speak. She used to be a man. She had been lying to me for 3 years. Our relationship, our love, it was all based on a lie. How did you react when you found out? I was in shock. I couldn't believe it. I went to her to hear the truth from her. She didn't deny it. She tried to explain, but I couldn't listen. I left. Where did you go after you left Aisha? Marcus rubbed his face with his hands. I don't remember exactly. I wandered around the hotel. Maybe I was in the parking lot. I needed to think, to pull myself together. Then I heard a scream and went back. Tamara found Aisha. Did you see anyone suspicious near Aisha's room? No, I told you I wasn't there. What about your brother? Where was he? Marcus frowned. I don't know. We split up after he showed me the documents. He probably went back to the banquet. Who do you think would want Aisha dead? Marcus shook his head. Everyone loved Aisha. She was… perfect. His voice trembled. At least I thought so. Victoria watched his reaction closely. Marcus seemed genuinely shocked, but that didn't prove anything. Many killers were good actors. Do you own a gun, Mr. Johnson? No, I've never liked guns. Thank you for your cooperation. That's all for now, but I may have more questions later. Victoria questioned Jamal Johnson last. Unlike his brother, 38-year-old Jamal seemed composed and in control of his emotions. He sat upright with his hands on the table and met the detective's gaze without a hint of embarrassment. Mr. Johnson, tell me what happened today, Victoria began. I was a witness at my brother's wedding, Jamal replied in an even voice. After the ceremony, I received an envelope. Anonymous. It contained documents about Aisha Thompson's past, about how she used to be a man. I showed them to Marcus. He was shocked and went to talk to her. I followed him to support him. They talked. Marcus left. I told Aisha that she had ruined my brother's life, and I left too. I returned to the banquet. Then there was a scream, and we all learned that Aisha was dead. When exactly did you receive this envelope? Are you sure it was after the ceremony? Jamal frowned. Yes, of course. Someone handed it to me during the banquet. Who exactly? I don't know. It was a waiter or someone from the staff. I didn't pay attention. Victoria made a note. This was the first discrepancy. Tamara mentioned that she had noticed a tense conversation between Jamal and his brother before the banquet. Where is this envelope and its contents now? With Marcus, probably. He took the documents with him when he went to see Aisha. As I understand it, you and Aisha had a strained relationship? Jamal shrugged. I never thought she was right for my brother. Too perfect, you know. And it turned out I was right. She had been cheating on him for years. Where were you between 6:30 and 7 p.m.? As I said, after talking to Aisha, I returned to the banquet. I talked to the guests and had a couple of glasses of champagne. Can anyone confirm this? There were a lot of guests there. Someone must have seen me. Victoria nodded, not showing that she had noticed another discrepancy. None of the guests mentioned seeing Jamal in the banquet hall at that time. Do you own a gun, Mr. Johnson? No. Victoria noticed him look away for a split second. Perhaps a lie, but it was impossible to say for sure. Were you close to your brother? Of course. We always supported each other, financially as well. Jamal tensed slightly. Marcus helped me out from time to time. My business isn't as successful as his. How significant was that help? I don't see how that's relevant to the murder, Jamal replied sharply. I'm just trying to get the full picture. We're checking all possibilities. Okay, Jamal continued reluctantly. The last year has been difficult. My business almost went bankrupt. Marcus helped me out by lending me a large sum of money. I planned to pay back the debt as soon as I got back on my feet. Do you think his marriage to Aisha could have affected your financial situation? Jamal frowned. What do you mean? Well, new wife, new priorities. Maybe less money to support your brother? Are you implying that I had a motive to kill Aisha? That's absurd. I loved my brother and wanted only the best for him. No one is making any accusations, Mr. Johnson. I'm just gathering information. After the interviews, Victoria returned to the crime scene. Something about Jamal's testimony didn't add up. It was too smooth, too calculated, and those discrepancies in the timing of receiving the envelope and its location after the conversation with Aisha. She approached one of the technicians examining the evidence. Did you find anything on the victim's hands? Gunpowder residue? Signs of a struggle? Nothing, replied the technician. If she resisted, there are no traces left. No gunpowder particles, which rules out suicide. What about the suspects? Marcus Johnson tested negative for gunpowder residue. Jamal Johnson's results aren't ready yet. Victoria nodded and continued to examine the room. She noticed something shiny under the bed. Bending down, she retrieved a cufflink with the initials J.J. Jamal Johnson. How did it get there if, according to him, he just talked to Aisha and left? She was even more alarmed by the information she received from the officer who questioned the hotel staff. None of the waiters had handed any envelopes to Jamal Johnson during the banquet. However, one of the hotel employees remembered seeing Jamal receive a package from a courier a week ago when he came to the hotel to discuss the details of the wedding. Aversion began to take shape. Jamal had known about Aisha's past for a week. He didn't show the documents to his brother right away, but waited. Why? What changed on the wedding day? Perhaps, seeing how much his brother was in love, how he was ready to give everything to Aisha, Jamal realized that his financial support was in jeopardy. Victoria checked the Johnson brothers' financial reports. Marcus was a successful businessman. His construction company was thriving. Jamal owned a small investment firm that had recently been operating at a loss. Over the past year, Marcus had transferred an amount equal to almost a third of his annual income to his brother's account. And a week before the wedding, Jamal's latest request for a loan was denied, the first time in their entire business relationship. The case was taking a new turn. Marcus had a motive to kill his wife in a fit of rage when he learned the truth. But Jamal's motive was much colder and more calculated. If Aisha remained in Marcus's life, his brother's financial support could end, especially if Marcus found out about her past later and forgave her for lying. Jamal, on the other hand, seemed to have obtained information about Aisha's past in advance and was waiting for the right moment. Victoria decided to talk to Tamara again. You said that Aisha was planning to move to another city with Marcus after their honeymoon? Yes, Tamara confirmed. They were going to Seattle. Marcus wanted to open a branch of his company there, and Aisha could start with a clean slate where no one knew her past. Did Jamal know about these plans? Tamara thought for a moment. I'm not sure. But Marcus mentioned that his brother wasn't very happy when he found out about the possible move. They had always been very close, and Jamal relied on Marcus for many things. The picture was becoming clearer. Jamal was afraid of losing his influence over his brother and his financial support. Aisha was a threat not only because of her past, but also because she could take Marcus far away from his brother, severing their close bond. Victoria returned to the list of clues. The weapon had still not been found. If Jamal had indeed killed Aisha, he must have disposed of the gun somewhere. The hotel had been cordoned off immediately after the body was discovered, so he couldn't have gone far. Check the dumpsters, the ventilation shafts, anywhere a weapon could be quickly hidden, she ordered. An hour later, one of the officers reported a discovery. Detective Clark, we found a gun in the service room's garbage chute. Small caliber. Looks like the murder weapon. Fingerprints? Wiped clean. But ballistics will confirm if the bullets are a match. Victoria nodded. The case was becoming clearer, but there was still no direct evidence against Jamal Johnson. She needed to dig deeper, find witnesses who might have seen him in the hallway after Marcus left Aisha's room. She reviewed the surveillance footage from the hallway, but unfortunately, the camera pointed at the bride's room door was turned off. Was it a coincidence or intentional? Her thoughts were interrupted by her cell phone ringing. Detective Clark, she answered. The gunshot residue test results for Jamal Johnson are positive, the lab technician reported. Microparticles were found on his jacket sleeve. Victoria smiled. This was the first substantial piece of evidence. Now she needed to establish a connection between Jamal and the gun found in the garbage chute. She decided to talk to Marcus again, this time about his brother. Mr. Johnson, does your brother have a gun? She asked directly. Marcus looked surprised. I don't think so. Although, he paused, remembering. 2 weeks ago, he mentioned that he was going to buy a gun for self-defense. There had been a spate of robberies in the area where his office is located. I don't know if he did it. Did he ever show any aggression, especially towards Aisha? Marcus frowned. Jamal never liked Aisha, that's true. He thought she wasn't right for our family, that she was too perfect. He smiled bitterly. How ironic that sounds now. But there's a huge distance between dislike and murder. You don't think my brother... I'm considering all possibilities, Mr. Johnson. Was your brother financially dependent on you? Yes, his business had been struggling lately. I helped him, of course. He's my brother. Did you recently refuse to give him another loan? Marcus looked surprised. How did you find out? Yes, a week ago. Preparing for the wedding was expensive, and I told him I could only help after I got back from my honeymoon. He was disappointed, but he seemed to understand. How did he react to your plans to move to Seattle? Marcus looked up, suddenly realizing where the conversation was going. He was against it. He said I was abandoning my family for a woman I'd only known for 3 years. Victoria saw the painful realization of the possible truth reflected on Marcus's face. Do you think Jamal could have... for the money? That's crazy. Sometimes people do crazy things when they feel they're losing control of their lives, Victoria replied gently, especially if they're used to relying on others. She left Marcus alone with his thoughts and returned to the investigation. Now she had enough grounds to obtain a search warrant for Jamal Johnson's apartment and office. Perhaps there would be additional evidence linking him to Aisha's murder. The case was beginning to take shape, but Victoria knew she had to proceed with caution. Jamal was smart and calculating. If he really had killed Aisha, he had surely tried to cover his tracks. But every killer makes a mistake, and it is the detective's job to find it. Victoria looked at the photo of the happy couple, Marcus and Aisha, taken just a few hours ago, and felt a sharp sense of injustice at what had happened. Regardless of Aisha's past, she did not deserve such a death, and Victoria was determined to find her killer and bring him to justice. The investigation was just beginning, but Detective Clark already felt she was on the right track. Now she had to gather enough evidence to bring the truth to light. The next morning greeted Victoria Clark with a gloomy sky and drizzling rain. She had spent most of the night at the station, analyzing the evidence and piecing together the chronology of events. Now, sitting at her desk with her third cup of coffee, she was waiting for the results of the forensic examination, which could be decisive in this case. There was a knock at her office door, and a young officer entered with a folder in his hands. "Detective Clark, the ballistics results," he said, handing her the documents. "The bullets extracted from the victim's body match the gun found in the garbage chute." Victoria nodded as she looked through the report. It was an important step in the investigation, but still not enough to press charges. They needed to link the weapon directly to Jamal Johnson. "What about the fingerprints?" she asked. "The gun was thoroughly wiped down, but the experts found a partial print on one of the cartridges in the magazine. The comparison with the database is not yet complete." "What about the surveillance camera footage?" "The technicians recovered deleted files from the hotel server. Someone deliberately erased the footage from the camera in the fourth-floor hallway between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. But a backup copy was saved on an external server." Victoria sat up straight in her chair, her eyes lighting up with interest. "Show me." The officer turned on his laptop and opened the video file. The recording showed the fourth-floor hallway. The timestamp showed 6:15 p.m. Marcus and Jamal appeared in the frame, heading toward the bride's room. They went inside, and a few minutes later, Marcus ran out, clearly agitated. Jamal remained in the room. "Fast forward," Victoria asked. The recording showed Jamal leaving the room at 6:24 p.m., looking around and walking quickly toward the service staircase. At 6:31 p.m., Tamara appeared in the hallway, knocked on the door of the room, and receiving no answer, went inside. A few seconds later, her scream rang out. "Check the recordings from the service staircase and the back entrance," Victoria ordered. Soon they found Jamal on another camera. He was going down the service staircase, then walking through the kitchen to the garbage chute. His hand was tucked into the inside pocket of his jacket, and when he walked away from the garbage chute, the pocket looked empty. "There it is," Victoria said quietly. "We have footage of him disposing of the weapon. Check his credit cards and bank accounts for the last month. Look for any transactions related to the purchase of a weapon." While the officer was busy with the task, a technician from the electronic forensics department entered the office. "Detective, we analyzed the victim's phone," she said, handing over the report. "We found deleted messages that we were able to recover. A week before the murder, Aisha received several threatening texts from an anonymous number. Victoria looked through the transcripts of the messages. "I know who you really are, Andrew. I advise you to call off the wedding before it's too late. Marcus deserves a real woman, not a fake. If you don't disappear from his life, I'll tell him the truth." The last message was sent the day before the wedding. "Tomorrow, everyone will know your dirty secret." "Were you able to trace where these messages were sent from?" Victoria asked. "It's a disposable prepaid number, but we traced where the phone was activated. It was at the DuPont Mall 2 weeks ago. They should have surveillance camera footage." Victoria nodded. "Request those recordings immediately, and check Jamal's phone browser history for searches about buying prepaid phones or how to delete digital traces." The events were beginning to form a clear picture. Jamal, upon learning of Aisha's past, began planning how to get rid of her. First, he tried to intimidate her, hoping she would break off the engagement herself. When that didn't work, he decided to reveal the truth to Marcus at the most emotional moment, on their wedding day. He then used the ensuing chaos to kill Aisha and frame his brother. There was another knock at the door. It was the officer in charge of financial investigations. "Detective, we found an interesting transaction." 2 weeks ago, Jamal Johnson withdrew $3,000 in cash from his account. On the same day, he visited the DuPont Mall. "That's where the prepaid phone was activated," Victoria noted. "Perhaps he was buying not only a phone, but also a weapon on the black market." She gathered all the reports and headed to the department head. An hour later, She had an arrest warrant for Jamal Johnson on suspicion of murdering Aisha Thompson. Victoria and 2 officers went to Jamal's house. As they pulled up to his apartment, they noticed him hurriedly carrying a suitcase to his car. "Jamal Johnson!" Victoria shouted, getting out of the car with her gun at the ready. "DuPont police! Stay where you are!" Jamal froze for a moment, then dropped the suitcase and tried to run. But the officers were faster. A few seconds later, he was lying on the ground with handcuffs snapped onto his wrists. "Jamal Johnson, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Aisha Thompson," Victoria said, reading him his rights. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court." Jamal did not resist, but his eyes flashed with anger. "You can't prove anything," he hissed through clenched teeth. "She got what she deserved. She lied to everyone, including my brother. Save your explanations for the interrogation," Victoria replied, helping him to his feet. At the police station, Jamal was taken to an interrogation room. Victoria gave him an hour alone while she gathered all the evidence together. It was a standard tactic, to give the suspect time to think, to increase his anxiety. When she finally entered the interrogation room, Jamal sat with a stony face, his arms folded on the table. "Mr. Johnson," Victoria began, laying out photos, printouts of messages, and forensic reports in front of him. "We have evidence that you sent threatening messages to Aisha Thompson from a prepaid phone. We have CCTV footage of you entering and leaving her room at the time of the murder. We found the gun she was killed with, and we have video footage of you disposing of it in the garbage chute. Traces of gunpowder were found on your clothes. Your partial fingerprint was found on one of the bullets." She laid out all the evidence before him, methodically, one piece at a time. "All of this, combined with your attempt to flee, paints an irrefutable picture. You killed Aisha Thompson. The only question is why Jamal was silent, staring at the evidence in front of him. His jaw was clenched, his fingers clenched until his knuckles turned white. "I want a lawyer," he finally said. "That's your right," Victoria nodded. "But think about this. If you cooperate and tell your side of the story, it could help you. The court takes voluntary confessions and remorse into account." Jamal smirked. "Remorse? You think I'm remorseful? I was protecting my brother, my family. Protecting them from whom? From the woman your brother loved?" "She wasn't a woman!" Jamal suddenly shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "She was a fraud! A freak. She tricked my brother into marrying her, knowing he would never have agreed if he had known the truth." Victoria remained calm, giving Jamal a chance to speak his mind. "So you admit you killed her?" Jamal took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. "Yes," he finally said. "I killed her. And I would do it again. I tried to warn her. I sent her messages, hoping she would leave on her own. But this..." He paused, searching for the right word. This stubborn creature decided to continue the deception. "Tell me what happened in the bride's room." Jamal leaned back in his chair. "I received an anonymous letter about her past a week before the wedding. At first, I didn't believe it, so I conducted my own investigation. When I was convinced it was true, I tried to get her to leave without a scandal. She refused. Then I decided to show the evidence to Marcus on the wedding day. Why on the wedding day? Why not earlier? I hoped she would change her mind. Besides," he paused for a moment, "Marcus was so happy. I didn't want to ruin it until the last moment. But when I saw her shining in that dress, everyone applauding the perfect couple, I knew I had to act. And what happened in the room?" Marcus saw the evidence and was furious. He yelled at her, then ran away. I stayed. I told her she had ruined my brother's life. She blamed me, said I had ruined everything by showing the documents. That made me furious. She wasn't even sorry, you know? She thought she was right. "And you decided to kill her?" Jamal lowered his head. "It wasn't planned. I bought the gun for self-defense 2 weeks ago. I carried it with me because of the frequent robberies. At that moment..." I just wanted to protect my brother from shame. I imagined how everyone would laugh at him when they found out the truth. How his business would suffer. How she would take him to Seattle, away from his family, away from me. Were you afraid of losing his support? Financial dependence? Jamal raised his head, anger flashing in his eyes. It's not about the money. Marcus and I have always been together. Since childhood. We've always supported each other. And she comes out of nowhere with a fake personality and destroys everything. So you shot her to protect your brother? Yes, Jamal replied firmly. And I would do it again. Marcus deserves a normal life, a real woman who will bear his children. Victoria recorded his testimony, maintaining professional detachment, although inside she was seething with indignation. After you shot Aisha, you disposed of the gun in the garbage chute and returned to the banquet, pretending that nothing had happened? Yes. I knew Marcus would be suspected. He had a motive. But I was sure I could prove his innocence once the dust settled. In the meantime, it was the best decision. Victoria closed her notebook. Jamal Johnson, you are officially under arrest for the murder of Aisha Thompson. Your confession has been recorded and will be used in court. As Jamal was led away to a cell, Victoria felt the familiar mix of satisfaction at solving the case and bitterness at the impossibility of bringing the victim back to life. She gathered all the documents and headed to the prosecutor's office to begin preparations for the trial. On the way, she ran into Marcus, who had come to the station after learning of his brother's arrest. "Is it true?" he asked, his eyes red from lack of sleep and tears. "Did Jamal kill Aisha?" Victoria nodded. He confessed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson." Marcus shook his head, unable to believe what had happened. Why? Was it for the money? Because I was helping him? No, Victoria replied softly. He claims he did it to protect you. From shame, as he calls it. From living with a man who, in his opinion, deceived you. Marcus sank into the nearest chair, covering his face with his hands. "I was so angry when I found out the truth," he whispered. "I felt betrayed. But then, when I saw her body, I realized I loved her. Not for who she was before, but for who she had become. For her smile, her voice, her care. Now I've lost her and my brother." Victoria put her hand on his shoulder. "You're not to blame for what happened, Mr. Johnson. Not for Aisha's murder, nor for your brother's decisions. But if I hadn't run away, if I had stayed and listened to her, she might still be alive. You couldn't have known what would happen." No one could. Marcus looked up, his eyes filled with deep pain. "Can I see my brother?" Victoria nodded. "I'll arrange it. But keep in mind, he doesn't regret what he did. He truly believes he did the right thing." "I know," Marcus replied bitterly. "Jamal has always been stubborn. And he always thought he knew what was best for me." Later, watching the brothers meeting through a one-way mirror, Victoria reflected on the price of prejudice and fanaticism. Jamal sat across from Marcus, still confident that he was right. Marcus, on the other hand, looked broken, realizing too late what true love and acceptance were. "I wanted to protect you," Jamal said. "She lied to you from the very beginning." "That wasn't your decision to make, Jamal," Marcus replied. "You took away my chance to forgive her. The chance to decide for myself if I could live with her past. You took away the person I loved. You would have come to your senses in a couple of years, once the initial shock wore off. When you realized you were living with a man in a woman's body." "She wasn't a man," Marcus exclaimed. "She was a woman who went through hell to become herself. And now you're in hell too, Jamal. And so am I." Victoria turned away from the mirror. She didn't need to hear anymore. The story was simple and tragic. A person who was unable to accept differences decided that he had the right to take someone else's life. Leaving the police station late in the evening, Victoria met Tamara, who had come to pick up Aisha's personal belongings, which had been seized during the crime scene investigation. "Thank you for finding him," Tamara said, accepting the bag with her friend's belongings. "Aisha didn't deserve such a death." "No one deserves such a death," Victoria replied, "especially on what should have been the happiest day of her life. You know, she was afraid that Marcus wouldn't accept her if he found out the truth," Tamara said quietly. "But I always believed that love can overcome prejudice. That when you truly love someone, their past matters less than their present and future." Victoria nodded. "It seems that in the end, she was right to fear not Marcus, but his brother. The tragedy is," Tamara said with a bitter smile, "that Marcus, by all accounts, would have been able to accept her. Maybe not right away, but he could have. Jamal deprived them both of that chance." They stood on the steps of the police station, two women now bound by their shared knowledge of this tragedy. The rain had stopped, and the last rays of the setting sun painted the wet asphalt in shades of red and orange. "What will happen to Marcus?" Victoria asked. "I don't know," Tamara replied honestly. "He lost the two people closest to him in one day. One because of death, the other because of betrayal. That's not easy to get through. Tell him that if he needs help, psychological support, the department can provide it." Tamara nodded. "I will. Thank you, Detective, for everything." Victoria watched Tamara leave, clutching her friend's bag of belongings. There were no winners in this story, only losers. Prejudice, fear, and rejection all led to the young woman's life being cut short on the day that was supposed to be the beginning of her true happiness. 2 weeks later, Aisha's funeral took place. Victoria, as the lead detective on the case, attended the ceremony. Marcus stood by the coffin, thin and haggard, a far cry from the happy groom he had been so recently. Next to him were Tamara and a few friends who had come to say goodbye to Aisha. After the ceremony, Marcus approached Victoria. "Jamal's trial will begin in a month," he said. "I will testify against him." "That's a difficult decision," Victoria remarked. "He is your brother, after all." "A brother who killed my wife," Marcus replied bitterly. "You know, I've been thinking a lot these past few days. About what it means to be a real man, a real woman. About what's more important. What we're born with or who we become. Aisha was the most real woman I ever knew. Brave, loving, loyal, and my brother. He only cared about how things looked to others." Victoria nodded, respecting his position. "What are you going to do now?" "I'm still planning to move to Seattle," Marcus replied. "Open a branch of the company there. There are too many memories here in DuPont. Tamara decided to come with me. She was Aisha's best friend, and now we're helping each other cope with the loss." "It's good that you're not alone," Victoria said. Marcus looked at the freshly dug grave where Aisha now lay. "You know what I can't forgive myself for? That in that moment, in the bride's room, I rejected her. That my last words to her were full of anger. She died thinking that I couldn't accept her for who she was." "Don't torture yourself with that," Victoria said gently. "You couldn't have known what would happen. And your reaction was natural for someone who had received such a shock." "Maybe," Marcus replied. "But now I have to live with that knowledge. And with the understanding that if I had been more open, less judgmental, she might still be alive. She might have told me the truth sooner, without fear of losing me." Victoria understood his feelings. As a detective, she had seen too often how fear and prejudice led to tragedy, how the human inability to accept differences destroyed lives. "What matters is that you understand now," she said, "and that this tragedy has changed you for the better." "Yes," Marcus nodded, looking into the distance. Only the price of that understanding was too high. They stood in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The case had been solved, the killer was awaiting trial, but justice could not bring Aisha back to life. It could not erase the pain and loss. All that remained was a lesson for the living, a reminder that love and acceptance are more important than prejudice and convention. Victoria knew that this case would stay with her for a long time, not because of the complexity of the investigation, but because of its human tragedy, because it showed the darkest sides of human fanaticism and the brightest manifestations of forgiveness and growth. When she got into her car to return to the station, one last glance at the cemetery showed her Marcus still standing at Aisha's grave with a bouquet of white roses, the same ones from their wedding. There was more love and acceptance in that gesture than in 1,000 words. And perhaps, Victoria thought, that acceptance, albeit belated, was the only bright spot in this grim story of the murder of a perfect girl.